Donald Trump has returned to the scene of his many crimes for the first time since leaving the White House. Trump was back in Washington, D.C., speaking at the America First Agenda Summit. Upon his return, he was welcomed by some of the very people who were running for their lives through the hallway during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, Lindsey Graham, and Ted Cruz were among some of the other tethers who were there for his opening act. But while most Republicans in Congress remain in lockstep with the former twice impeached president, the tide in conservative media outlets appears to be shifting away from Donald Trump onto the next far-right star. In the past few days, editorial boards of two Rupert Murdoch-owned conservative papers, the New York Post and Wall Street Journal, both issued harsh rebukes of Trump for his role in the insurrection. Even Trump's pals at Fox and Friends are questioning his standing as the 2024 frontrunner compared to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. That led the former president to lash out on his own social media site, calling the program, quote, terrible, saying they, quote, botched his poll numbers on purpose. Joining me now, Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large of The Bulwark, and an MSNBC contributor, and Fernando Mondi, MSNBC political analyst and pollster. I am so excited to talk to both of you guys about this tonight because I think this is interesting, right? The idea that the right-wing media ecosphere might be moving off of Trump reminds me of that old Seinfeld episode where, like, George and Jerry were talking about trying to do the switch. This is not easy to do, right? This is not something you can pull off. So Charlie, is it possible that the Tuckers and the Sean Hannitys and everybody else in the world will actually make a move away from Trump? Or do you think this is just sort of nudging him to stay in order and keep along the lines of what they wanted in the past? You think this could be a real split?
Well, I don't see it. I don't see it quite yet. You know, when you talk about the conservative media moving off Trump, it's mainly the print media. And they are Rupert Murdoch newspapers. But if the print media was that important in conservative circles, Donald Trump never would have gotten the nomination in the first place. It will be interesting to see what Fox primetime folks do. But keep in mind, you know, something's been unleashed that can't be easily put back in the bottle, particularly by a party that is as feckless and gutless as this party has been. And so, you know, as long as you have, you know, talk radio and you have Newsmax and you have the primetime of Fox continuing to push the line, the split is only apparent. I mean, the other problem is simply this. Who is going to take out Donald Trump? I mean, there may be a consensus among establishment Republicans that it's time to move on. But unless somebody steps up and actually does it and denounces Trump and says, me, not him, and it's one-on-one, it won't happen. Otherwise, we'll just have a replay of 2015 and 2016. And I have to say, you know, you look at Mike Pence, and you see sort of the embodiment of the disappointment of disappointing Republicans. I mean, what he did on January 6th should be the defining moment of his entire career, his entire life, rather than standing up and saying, look, this is me versus Donald Trump. He wanted to violate the Constitution. I supported the Constitution. He's walking away from his own moment of courage. That's not the kind of political guts that's going to take down Donald Trump in 2024.
Look, as long as Mike Pence wants to cosplay Reek from Game of Thrones and take any kind of abuse and still kiss up to the former president, there is no chance that he is going to be somebody of importance. But Fernand, this is what brings to mind. Thank you. This is what brings to mind the current governor of your state. Now, look, if you're trying to take control of a organization, because the Republicans are no longer a party, that is in the thrall of an anti-democratic, authoritarian white nationalist, that's not super easy. It's not barely inconvenience. That is a tough process. In Florida, do you think Ron DeSantis has the numbers, both financial and polling-wise, to really make a run at Trump? Or is he just hoping that Donald Trump somehow implodes on his own and he might be able to slip in?
Oh, Jason, without question, it's the latter scenario you described. You know, DeSantis is many things. He's not a complete and total idiot. He knows that Donald Trump made him, and he also knows that Donald Trump can destroy him. And that's why the game that DeSantis is playing is the waiting game. He's probably the person most heartened by the Garland comments, because it's going to take some sort of an act like that, an indictment of Trump, and maybe even a conviction to actually remove him from the scene completely. Last I checked, the Republican Party is still a cult. It is the cult of Donald Trump. He is the virus that took over the host. And there is no way to kill the virus without killing the host. They're married to Trump. They made it. They have to break it. There's no separating it. And as long as he has his sights on the nomination in 2024, Jason, I don't see anyone prying it from Donald Trump's cold hands.
Charlie, I want to play some sound from Mark Short talking about not only sort of Trump and the current state of the party, but also one of the shining lights of the Republican Party, and whether this also sort of speaks to some internal conflicts we'll be seeing in the coming months.
Well, I don't know if Mike Pence will run for president in 2024, but I don't think Matt Gaetz will have an impact on that. In fact, I'd be surprised if he was still voting. It's more likely he'll be in prison for child sex trafficking by 2024. And I'm actually surprised that Florida law enforcement still allows him to speak to teenage conferences like that. So I'm not too worried about Matt Gaetz. Thanks.
I tried to get the production team to play the ether beat behind that. We couldn't get it fast enough. Look, it's really telling when you have this sort of Republican on Republican violence. I don't think that the party is no longer a cult. But, Charlie, what do you think it says that they're no longer sort of closing ranks around somebody like Matt Gaetz, who seemed basically like the Teflon Don for the last year and a half, despite multiple allegations of inappropriate and possibly illegal behavior?
You know, I had the same reaction listening to him, that he felt it looked like he was sort of unchained, that he's willing to say things that they hadn't been willing to say before. But keep in mind, it's one thing to criticize somebody like Matt Gaetz. It's something very different to go after Donald Trump. And Jason, I think your analogy of the Republican Party having this abusive relationship with Donald Trump is very, very apt. You know, they can't break away from it, and the more he threatens them and insults him, the tighter they cling to him. So I agree with the analysis that we're a long way away from seeing the break. Look, you know, if Ron DeSantis does run against Donald Trump, he does know what Trump will do to him. He also knows that Donald Trump is not going to accept defeat in a Republican primary any more than he does in a general election. So I don't want to be, you know, come off as I'm being glib here, but there are a lot of Republicans that basically are looking for something to happen to get them off the hook. You know, maybe there will be an indictment. Maybe there'll be a meteor attack. Maybe there will be, you know, a deadly Big Mac. Something that will solve the Donald Trump problem for them, because they are unwilling to do this. So, yes, they're willing to fight with one another. They're willing to pull the knives out, you know, because, look, it's a massive grift. And there's just so much turf, and they're going to be doing that. But that's a very, very different sort of thing than taking on the king, the Orange God King himself. And so I share Ferdinand's skepticism about that.
And, of course, when you come for the king, you best not miss, right? Because he will come back and bury you financially and bury you rhetorically. With that in mind, you know, one of the things that we've been hearing about the last couple of weeks, there's rumors that the former twice impeached president and leader of a terrorist attack MAGA movement, Donald Trump, may be making his announcement sometime this fall. And Fernand, it's not so much that I think that has an impact on, say, 2024. We don't know what's going to happen that far. But I can imagine that in places like Wisconsin, where Charlie is, in places like Pennsylvania, possibly in places like Florida, that the former president announcing is going to force some of these Senate candidates to have to declare their loyalty to him again right before the election. And it seems like sometimes Donald Trump is the best friend of the Democrats because they have somebody to run against. Do you think that potential announcement this fall could harm key Senate races if Democrats are forced or are able to show that these people are more loyal to him than the constituents of the states are running in?
Oh, I absolutely do. And you have to remember, Jason, and Charlie hinted at it earlier, Donald Trump has no interest in the Republican Party. He could care less if the Republican Party succeeds or fails or blows up in history. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. And the other variable that we have to think about here is Donald Trump's calculation about an early announcement for president is that it is what in his mind thinks will prevent that indictment from coming down. So when you add that element of an early announcement as a Trump legal strategy to lower the pressure that he knows is coming his way, it becomes all of the more desperate an action and all of the more demanding of total loyalty from anyone in the Republican Party. And God forbid the Republican that does not show that loyalty and kiss that ring, because Trump will come after them. And Ron DeSantis, by the way, knows that better than anyone.
Yes.
Charlie Sykes and Fernando Amandi, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.